Have you ever been haunted by that silent, persistent feeling, the one that whispers when the world is quiet, that you're wasting your life? Despite all the distractions, all the noise, all the people and tasks you bury yourself in, something inside remains untouched, unsettled. You could be endlessly busy, constantly surrounded, endlessly productive, and yet a part of you feels like it's missing. Not dead, just absent. And that absence aches. It feels like you're drifting, not living, but existing. Moving through the motions like a ghost in your own story. You've tried to explain this. Maybe you called it anxiety. Perhaps someone in a white coat called it depression and handed you a solution in pill form. A little something for the morning, another for the night. And the ache? It dulled, numbed, muted. Time passed. The world moved on. But something within you, something vital, remained unheard. But what if that ache isn't a malfunction? What if your discomfort is not a sign of weakness or illness but a message, clear and urgent, meant to awaken you? Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers in modern psychology, believed many so-called disorders of the mind were not pathologies to be suppressed but signals from the soul, a cry for transformation. What if your unrest isn't a disorder, but a demand for realignment? What if your psyche, in its wisdom, is trying to tell you that the life you're leading no longer fits the life you were born to live? You may be stuck in routines you never chose, a job that drains your spirit, relationships that sap your energy, dreams you inherited from others and never questioned. And all the while, beneath the noise and numbness, your essence is calling out. But we're not taught to listen to that voice. We're taught to override it, to stay functional, to adjust, adapt, conform, to keep the machine running. And so we become unwell in silence, while society applauds our productivity. Jung saw things differently. To him, healing didn't come from denial, but from descent. The way out is not up and away, it is down and in. Not through suppression, but through understanding. He wrote, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." You are suffering not because you are broken, but because you are avoiding the pain that would set you free. And as long as you keep running, the suffering won't stop. This message isn't for those looking for entertainment. It's for those who are done pretending. For the ones who feel like they are sinking, but still carry a small spark of hope that there is more. And there is. But it begins with a brutal act of honesty. You must stop running and begin listening. Listening to yourself, to your unconscious, to the pain you've been medicating, numbing, ignoring. Pain is not your enemy, it is your guide. If you're still here, you already sense the truth, that the emptiness you feel isn't failure. It's the absence of your own presence in your life. And that, at last, is what must change. You've been feeling low for weeks, maybe months. You've told yourself it's just a phase. You've pushed through, worked harder, smiled when you didn't mean it. And finally, you did what everyone says you should. You went to a doctor. You sat in that office, under fluorescent lights, surrounded by silence, and tried to explain. You spoke of your sleepless nights, the tightness in your chest, the unshakable weight you carry that no one else can see. You described the anxiety that comes from nowhere, the emptiness, the haunting feeling that something is deeply wrong, even if you can't explain what. The doctor nodded, typed some notes, and after 15 minutes, if that, you were given a diagnosis, anxiety. Here's a prescription. Take this. You'll feel better soon. And so your suffering, once deeply human and complex, becomes a chemical imbalance, an equation, a label, and your existential cry, a soul scream, becomes a number on a pill bottle. But what no one tells you is that this kind of healing is not meant for your soul. It's meant for your functionality. It's meant to get you back to work, back to consuming, back to producing, back to surviving. The system does not care if you are whole. It only needs you to keep moving. The pills don't cure the wound, they anesthetize it. And that, Jung believed, is the most dangerous illusion of all. Because real healing cannot happen through suppression. You cannot medicate your way out of a life that is killing your spirit. Jung saw that modern neurosis is not primarily a failure of the brain, but of the soul's alignment. It arises when you abandon your authenticity, when you silence your instincts, repress your truth, and choose the comfort of the crowd over the calling of your core. When that happens, the soul does not stay quiet. It speaks in the only language it can, through the body, through the mind, through panic, through despair, through a constant, haunting sense that you are not where you are meant to be. But instead of listening to this wisdom, we numb it. We tranquilize it. We medicate it out of existence. The pain was the message. And now the message is lost. We are told to return to normal, but what if normal is the real sickness? A job that deadens your spirit. Relationships that exist only to maintain appearances. A lifestyle of constant stimulation but no meaning. A life that looks fine from the outside but is hollow within. This is the world we call functional. But your anxiety, your sadness, your burnout, they are not failures. They are signals. They are your soul pleading, "This is not the life I came here to live." And when you ignore this voice long enough, it will begin to scream. The body will revolt. The spirit will retreat. You'll find yourself caught in cycles of breakdowns, of disconnection, of chronic numbness. And yet the system is ready, always ready, with a new label, a new sedative, a new way to keep you in place. The more you adapt to this artificial model of health, the further you drift from yourself, until you no longer feel pain, or joy, or meaning. You just exist. Numb. Efficient. Quiet. They call that maturity. Jung called it tragedy. He warned, if we treat the symptoms without uncovering their source, we create a false sense of healing. Outwardly, you may appear improved. Inwardly, you remain fractured. And over time, this inner division, the space between what you feel and what you live, leads to collapse. Because the soul cannot be silenced forever. It will demand its due. Burnout, breakdowns, emptiness so vast it swallows everything. This isn't just personal pain, it's cultural. A symptom of a civilization that no longer knows how to suffer with purpose. A culture that fears pain because it has forgotten that pain can transform. But Jung knew. He taught that suffering isn't something to flee, it's something to enter. It is the beginning of the real journey, the start of individuation. And in today's world, where every discomfort is pathologized and numbed, that idea is revolutionary. Because by fleeing from our pain, we also flee from our power. And by silencing our wounds, we silence our becoming. Let's ask something simple, something dangerous. Why are so many people suffering, emotionally, spiritually, even while surrounded by material comfort, technological convenience, and supposed freedom? We live in an age of unprecedented access. We can entertain ourselves endlessly. We can buy more than ever, connect across continents, binge knowledge on demand. And yet, loneliness pervades. Depression is on the rise. Anxiety is the silent soundtrack of modern existence. What went wrong? Jung understood what many still fail to see, that the root of suffering today isn't just in your mind. It's in the world that shaped your mind. The structures that mold you. The stories you were told. The expectations you inherited before you even knew your own name. Our society is not neutral. It is not designed to cultivate wholeness. It is designed to mold conformity. From the moment you are born, you are given a script. Study hard. Be obedient. Choose a career that is safe, not meaningful. Produce. Achieve. Don't question too much. Smile. Pose. Perform. Hide your pain. Be strong. Be functional. Be useful. We grow up mastering this performance. We learn how to win approval, how to climb ladders, how to be admired. But almost no one teaches us how to be ourselves, how to listen to our inner voice, how to honor our instincts, How to ask the most vital question of all: what makes my life worth living? This is not a coincidence. This is programming. Modern culture teaches us that our identity comes from outside, from titles, from wealth, from social approval, from external validation. But Jung saw how fatal this can be. Because when your self-worth depends on things beyond your control, on praise, on perfection, on performance, you become fragile. You become hollow. And worst of all, you become disconnected. Disconnected from your intuition, from your authenticity, from your soul. This is when the emptiness begins to grow. You follow the rules. You check the boxes. You do everything you were taught to do. But deep down, you feel misplaced. Like you're living a life meant for someone else. Like something's wrong, but you don't have the words to name it. This feeling is not weakness. It is truth. It is the evidence of disconnection. Disconnection from what is real, spontaneous, instinctive. And Jung saw this clearly, that disconnection is what gives rise to the deepest psychological suffering. But here's the problem: society depends on your disconnection. Because disconnected people are easier to control. They are predictable, docile, profitable. They consume more, question less, adapt without resistance. They keep the machine running, even as they rot inside. And when they collapse, under the weight of their anxiety, their depression, their numbness, the system does not offer truth. It offers a product, a label, a treatment. But Jung said healing cannot happen without confrontation. The individual must confront the world that wounded them. You must understand how you were conditioned. What parts of yourself were silenced? What dreams were abandoned so you could fit in? And that is a brutal reckoning. Because it means admitting that the life you've built may not be your own. That the success you've earned may be rooted in self-betrayal. That you've shaped yourself into something acceptable, but not true. This realization hurts. It shakes the foundation. But it also opens the only door to real healing. Because only when you recognize the source of your emptiness can you begin to fill it, with truth, with purpose, with self. And this journey of returning to yourself? It has a name. Jung called it individuation. There comes a moment, a quiet breaking point, when you can no longer pretend. When the weight of your mask becomes heavier than the pain it was meant to hide. When you realize you've been living as only a fraction of who you are, or worse, as a caricature of who the world told you to be. And it is at that moment, Carl Jung said, that the most important journey a person can undertake begins. The journey of individuation. But what does it mean, really, to individuate? Let's be clear, Jung was not talking about trendy self-help tricks or 5-minute morning habits. He wasn't referring to surface-level change or chasing self-improvement for the sake of achievement. Individuation is not about becoming better. It is about becoming whole. It is the deep, sacred, often excruciating process through which you stop being a reflection of your upbringing, your culture, your conditioning, and begin to become who you truly are. Not what you were told to be. Not what others need you to be. But what your soul has always whispered you were. And that journey doesn't begin in light. It begins in darkness. Individuation requires you to descend into the forgotten, the painful, the repressed. Everything you've denied or buried is waiting for you in what Jung called the personal unconscious. The traumas you never faced. The desires you suffocated. The stories you inherited but never questioned. To individuate, you must stop fleeing these shadows and start listening to them. Start integrating them. Because what you disown doesn't disappear. It festers. It controls you from the shadows, shaping your decisions, your relationships, your entire life. But integration is only the beginning. There is a deeper challenge. One that Jung described as the most difficult and transformative of all, the confrontation with the shadow. Your shadow is everything you have learned to hide from yourself. It is instinctive, primal, irrational, and shameful, at least according to your conditioning. It holds your anger, your envy, your greed. It holds the urges you deny, the impulses you condemn, the truths you don't want to see. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that is the essence of shadow work. Not to destroy your darkness, but to face it, to name it, to claim it. Why? Because the shadow you ignore will control you. But the shadow you integrate becomes power, vitality, authenticity, depth. Only when you stop waging war against yourself can you begin to live as a whole person. And this is the paradox. The very things you've been taught to hide are the keys to your aliveness. Your rage, when acknowledged, can become courage. Your shame, when embraced, can become empathy. Your darkness, when met with light, becomes strength. This is the heart of individuation. Not perfection, but wholeness. Not fitting in, but freedom. Not compliance, but authenticity. To individuate is to reconstruct the unity within you that was lost when you learned to perform. It is the return to the self, the deep, central, eternal part of you that has always existed beneath the noise. The self is not your ego. It is not your job title or your persona or your achievements. The self is the regulating center of your psyche, the inner compass, the totality of who you are. And here lies the great irony of our age. While the world constantly tells you to be better, Jung's message was far more radical. He said, stop trying to improve. Start trying to be real. Because once you live from your center, everything shifts. Your choices become clearer. Your relationships deepen. Even your suffering begins to make sense, not as punishment, but as transformation. But now we must ask the inevitable question. If this path is the only one that leads to real healing, why do so few walk it? Why do so many remain trapped in numbness, looping through the same pain, refusing to awaken? Stop for a moment and really look at the world around you. How many people do you know who seem to be simply existing rather than living? They go through their days filled with meetings, errands, responsibilities, notifications, and yet their eyes carry the dull, familiar glaze of someone just holding on. There's a name for this epidemic, though it's rarely spoken out loud. It's not burnout, not boredom, not even depression in the clinical sense. It's the absence of meaning. Carl Jung recognized this silent disease long before it became global. He observed that much of modern psychological suffering comes from a single devastating realization: life has lost its purpose. And not purpose in the grand, cosmic sense, not necessarily some divine destiny written in stars, but purpose as in personal alignment, a living connection between who you are and what you do. A deep sense that your existence is coherent, grounded, and real. Modern life is flooded with information, stimulation, opportunities, and choices. And yet, in the midst of all this abundance, we feel a bone-deep poverty of direction. Jung witnessed this in his patients. People who had achieved much, who had families, careers, education, safety. But beneath the surface was a different story, an undercurrent of disorientation, apathy, and sorrow. He discovered something profound. When people began to pursue meaning, their deepest symptoms, anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue, started to fade. Not when they achieved more, not when they were praised, but when they reconnected with something true. Because when you know why you are living, you can endure almost any pain. But when meaning is missing, even the sweetest pleasures taste like dust. Even the most impressive goals feel empty. And that's what we're seeing now. An epidemic of emptiness. People are not just tired because they do too much. They are tired because what they do means nothing to them. We have confused productivity with purpose. We have mistaken performance for fulfillment. We have accepted noise in place of depth. And so we collapse, not just from exhaustion, but from a starvation of the soul. Because human beings were not made to survive on distraction and dopamine hits. We were made to feel connected. to belong to something greater than ourselves, to know in our bones that our lives have weight, consequence, and meaning. Jung understood this existential hunger. He knew that the root of most suffering was not chemical, but spiritual. It was a loss of self, a loss of direction, a betrayal of the soul's calling. He saw how people, out of fear, chose careers they didn't believe in, entered relationships that diminished them, built lives based on the expectations of others, until they forgot what they once loved, forgot who they once were. And the body felt it. The mind began to crack. The spirit shriveled in silence. Because there is no medication for the absence of meaning. What's missing isn't serotonin. What's missing is selfhood. And this is where Jung's message becomes urgent. He didn't want people to merely function. He wanted them to live, to reclaim the voice that said, "This life is not mine, and I will not live it any longer." But how do you begin to build a life of meaning when everything around you is designed to distract you from it? Jung had an answer: go within. Return to the inner world that you abandoned. Because in the unconscious, the place most people avoid, lies the truth you've been searching for. That is where the keys to your purpose, your passion, your pain, and your potential live. And that's exactly where we're going next. Most people say they want to heal. But almost no one wants to pay the price. Because real healing, the kind Jung spoke of, isn't gentle. It doesn't begin with a new planner or a few motivational quotes. It begins with a descent, a confrontation, a journey into the deepest, most hidden parts of yourself. And that journey begins in the unconscious. To Jung, the unconscious was not a dumping ground for forgotten memories or a pit of past traumas. It was an entire inner world, vast, alive, symbolic. It held all the parts of you you've lost along the way, the instincts you repressed, the dreams you abandoned, the pain you avoided, the truth you feared. Everything you denied is there, waiting, not to punish, but to be acknowledged. And why does this matter? Because what you do not confront in the unconscious doesn't simply disappear, it governs your life. Quietly, invisibly, fatally. Jung said it clearly. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Jung said it clearly. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You think you're unlucky in love, but you're repeating patterns born from childhood wounds. You think you're cursed at work, but you're unconsciously afraid of your own success. You think the world is against you, but you're living inside a story you never wrote. The unconscious is like a mirror. Not a polite, filtered mirror, but one that shows you everything. Not who you pretend to be, but who you really are. And that's terrifying. Because it demands honesty. It demands you strip away every mask you've carefully crafted, every role, every excuse, every lie. But this confrontation is where your freedom begins. Because the unconscious doesn't only hold darkness. It also holds your forgotten strength, your wild creativity, your buried courage, your deepest intuition. The very parts of you that could make your life whole again are locked away, because society taught you they were too much, too wild, too weird, too dangerous. But Jung knew that integrating these parts, welcoming them back into your conscious life, is the only way to become truly yourself. This is what he called the expansion of consciousness. And no, it doesn't happen in a flash of enlightenment. It happens gradually, through dreams, symbols, silence, reflection, through art, journaling, therapy, through being brave enough to feel things you've numbed for years. The unconscious doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in images, in impulses, in synchronicities and emotions that seem to appear from nowhere. But it's not nowhere. It's you. It's the part of you you've locked away, waiting patiently to be invited back home. And when you begin to listen to this part, when you stop fearing your unconscious and begin dialoguing with it, something extraordinary happens. You gain clarity. You see the roots of your suffering. You understand your patterns. You reclaim your agency. You stop being a puppet and become a creator. As long as the unconscious remains in shadow, you are a hostage. A hostage to your past, to old wounds, to invisible chains passed down from parents, culture, history. But when you begin the descent, when you courageously step into the dark, uncertain waters of your own soul, you begin to free yourself. You realize your anxiety is not your enemy. It's your compass. Your sadness isn't weakness. It's a signal. Your restlessness isn't a curse. It's the soul knocking at the door. Yes, this process is slow. It is raw. It asks more from you than you think you can give. But it is also the only path to a life that is yours. And once you begin to live in alignment with your truth, not just the parts you like, but the totality of who you are, everything changes. You stop being ruled by fear. You stop numbing your days away. You begin to create instead of just survive. You stop mistaking numbness for peace. You become whole. There comes a moment in every life where the path splits. Not a subtle detour, not a quiet fork in the road, but a rupture. A moment that divides who you are now from who you were told to be. A moment that demands a decision so deep it shakes your entire foundation. And that decision is this. Will you keep living an anesthetized, borrowed life, or will you finally awaken to your own? Make no mistake, this is not a comfortable question. To choose awakening means choosing discomfort, uncertainty, and sometimes loss. It means walking away from what is familiar, even if that familiarity is suffocating. But it also means something else. It means stepping toward freedom. It means choosing the only kind of healing that truly lasts, the kind that comes from becoming who you were always meant to be. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that privilege? It demands everything. It demands you let go of your old stories, the ones that kept you small, safe, predictable. It demands you face your shadows, not as enemies, but as exiled parts of your wholeness. It demands you question what you were taught, what you were praised for, what you were punished for. But most of all, it demands courage. Because to awaken is to choose truth over comfort. To choose presence over performance. To choose life, not just existence. Most people will not make this choice. They will stay asleep. They will continue accumulating things they don't need to impress people they don't respect, while silently withering inside. They will trade depth for convenience, silence their intuition, and accept numbness as the cost of adulthood. But you don't have to. You are here, for a reason. Still reading, for a reason. Something inside you is stirring. Maybe it's still faint. Maybe it's already screaming. Either way, it is real. And it will not go away. Because your soul has never stopped believing in you. It knows you are not here just to clock in and clock out. Not here just to obey. Not here to live a life someone else drafted. You are here to remember. To reclaim the parts of yourself you've buried beneath performance. To rediscover the joy you stopped believing in. To reconnect with the truth that once made your heart beat faster. But this life, the one meant for you, won't come find you. You have to choose it. You have to walk toward it. Through the fear. Through the grief. Through the letting go of everything false. And yes, it will hurt. You will outgrow places, roles, even people. You will grieve the self you pretended to be. You will have to learn how to live all over again, not as an echo, but as a full, wild, honest soul. But in that grief is your rebirth. And in that honesty is your salvation. Because once you begin to live from your center, you become unshakable. You stop seeking permission. You stop apologizing for your truth. You stop asking the world who you are, and instead, tell it. So now, the question is yours to answer. What must you let go of to begin truly living? What illusion are you still clinging to? What story are you still telling yourself that keeps you small, safe, silent? Write it down. Speak it. Confess it. Because the moment you name it, you take the first step out of numbness. And if these words touched you, if they stirred something you thought was long gone, then this isn't the end for you. It's the beginning. Your soul is not a problem to be solved. It is a mystery to be lived. And now, more than ever, it is time. Time to wake up. Time to come home. Time to stop wasting your life and finally start living it. Because in the end, there are only two ways to live: anesthetized or awakened. There is no middle ground.